What's going on, you guys? So first event in the car, total success, but there's a couple things we got to do after every event, so I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of a walkthrough and a breakdown of what I do after every single drift event I go to. So we got the car in the garage, set up on the lift. I'm going to throw it up in the air real quick, and first thing we're going to do is go through, check the suspension, make sure everything's tight, and check for anything that might have came loose at all. Basically, we just call that going through nut and bolting the entire car and just, seeing if anything's damaged, anything needs to be replaced. Super common on heim joint setups that the jam nuts will come loose, so go through, check all the jam nuts and all that, check the tie rods, all the ball joints, all that stuff. So let's get it in the air. Basically, we're going to start just by going through and giving all the wheels a little shake, so we can see this wheel. It's got a little bit of play in it. Feels like a heim joint. So you can see this right here. Looks like this bolt probably just came loose. This side feels good, so we ain't got anything to touch on this side as of right now. So this side all feels tight. Still, when I say don't touch, I mean nothing major. We're still going to go through, take a wrench onto every single bolt, tighten them all up. Okay, so that's in the coilover. So the jam nut on the coilover came loose on this side. If you watch closely, you'll see it flexing right here in the coilover. So basically, this just came loose. I'll have to throw I bet I could probably loosen it with my hand. Yep. So that just came loose. Also feels like we have a little bit of play in our tie rod right here. And I can actually see and feel it. So it is in the heim joint right here. So this heim joint has a little bit of play in it. This is not a Teflon lined heim joint, so that's not really too surprising. These are pretty cheap to replace though, so I'll actually probably replace this with a better upgraded Teflon lined heim joint. Go through, tighten this up. This collar came loose too. Man. And now we're gonna do the same thing on this side, last corner. Yep. Same thing on this side. I know it's probably hard to see, but if you look right here, a little bit of play in that as well. So we're gonna have to go ahead and tighten that back down as well. Same thing with this heim joint right here. So this heim joint has a little bit of play in it as well. So we're gonna have to go through, replace these tie rod heim joints with some better ones, because if they're coming that loose after one event, they're not going to last long. So we need to get some better, thicker, probably Whalley Teflon line heim joints for that. That'll fix that. Find some way to crank these down a little bit tighter, because I did tighten. I went through, before we went to the event, I went through and nut and bolted everything on this car, tightened it all down. All these were tight, but as you can see, still found a way to come loose. So maybe we'll throw some like blue Loctite on it or something. I hate doing that because coilovers are something you adjust all the time, and when you put Loctite on them, it makes it more of a pain in the ass to use. I have seen people put tape around the top so they don't back off, but even though they're not backing off, it's still not going to prevent them from cracking loose. So maybe I can just try and crank them down a little bit tighter next time. Other than that, that's pretty much all we got to do for that. Go through, throw a wrench on everything, nut and bolt the entire suspension. But I just wanted to show you guys, after an event, go through, double check anything, because you don't want to run into bigger problems down the road. All right, next thing we're going to do now, we have the car up in the air. We're just going to go through underneath the car, check the exhaust, see if anything rattled loose, check all the clamps and everything, check for leaks, trans fluid, oil, diff fluid, all that. Go through, double check, make sure nothing is majorly leaking or you notice anything that might need to be replaced. So we're just gonna look up on the side of the engine. I mean, the side of the motor looks pretty dry. These lines are not leaking at all, which is nice. Double check the steering shaft, make sure nothing was interfering with any of that. And that all actually looks really good. No major leaks. We do have this drain plug leaking a little bit, just seeping, so that's nothing really too crazy though. I can live with that. Check your drive shaft. Make sure you don't have any interference issues with anything on your drive shaft. Make sure nothing's been like flopping around or hitting anything. And then we're gonna go through and double check all these bolts. So I can actually see this bolt is starting to back out here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. So I'm gonna be pulling this drive shaft out, and then we're gonna go through and re-torque all that. Probably throw some more Loctite on it. Diff is not leaking. Half shafts don't look like they're interfering with anything under here. This car definitely squats hard because we oiled the exhaust a little bit at the rear. So that's a thing. No fuel leaks. Other than that, everything looks pretty good. Now, after we go through, check the suspension and see what might need to be replaced, what might need to be tightened. Obviously, like I said before, go through, put a wrench on everything in between events, regardless if it's loose or not, just because you don't want to run into bigger issues and cause bigger issues down the line. So we're going to go ahead and nut and bolt the entire chassis before the next event for sure. We are going to replace these tie rods with better ones that won't wear out as fast. And then the only other thing you really need to do before going to another event, that I always do after an event, is do an oil change. You know, it's really important when you're drifting and running these motors really hard. The oil doesn't last nearly as long. You ain't getting 3,000 miles out of it. So it's always a good idea to do an oil change after every single event. Now, trans fluid and diff fluid, I'll usually swap out the diff and trans fluid every like 3 events, maybe 2-3 events. I'll swap that stuff out. So we're good on that for now. And as for coolant, you shouldn't be running coolant in your car if you go to the track. Regardless, you should just have straight water in it with possibly some water wetter, and that's good for all seasons. So unless we have any major leaks or anything like that, or I get air in the system we got to bleed out, no reason to address the cooling system. This system seems to work flawlessly. I don't think we've seen temperatures over 190 degrees, which is just amazing, because one of the biggest issues I had in my GTO and my RX-7 was we battled heat issues like crazy in that car. I would do 1 lap and the car would be at 240, 250 degrees. So this thing never seen over 190, and you know, it's just a great system, and I'm stoked on it. So we're gonna leave that alone. Check your brake fluids, all that. Pull your wheels off, check your pads, check your rotors. Usually I only need to replace the pads and rotors once a season. They usually last a pretty long time, so it's drifting, you're not really using your brakes super hard. But other than that, you know, it's pretty much it. Just go through everything and double check the entire car, put a wrench on everything, because you know, if you miss one bolt and that bolt falls off, you lose a wheel, you total your car. So spend the 15-20 minutes, go through, nut and bolt the entire chassis, make sure everything's good, and that's about it. Other than that, it's gonna be it for this one. So like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you're new, follow the build along, and you know, if you guys got any questions, leave them down below. Maybe I'll do another Q&A. So questions about the car, any of my other cars, the Supra, anything in general, drop them down below. I'll catch you guys on the next one.